we can get started with the slides and then grab the HMI here. So we'll keep the slides to a minimum. I'm not going to slide deck you to death here. I only have about 5 in total, I think. But what we're going to talk about here, as Ofer mentioned, is a real use case that we use inside of Vectara for GenAI. I know a lot of times when I'm talking to some people that are just getting started in their GenAI journey, they're asking questions like, or saying things like, "We've never built a GenAI app, right? Where do I even get started? What might this look like inside of my inside of my organization?" Other times we're sort of on the tail end of somebody that might have tried to build a GenAI application, and maybe they're a year in, they've tried sort of stringing a number of tools together, but they didn't have the expertise and know-how on how to actually do this. And they're hitting the tail end and saying things like, "It failed," right? We had an application that we tried to build and it failed. And failure might be too many hallucinations, the cost were out of control, latency was wild. And they're asking this question, is GenAI just not ready for prime time yet? Or is there something else that I should have been considering, right? So just agenda, we're going to walk through the demo, not to bury the lead. It's going to be on a sort of form-filling type of demo. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have either sent out a RFI, RFP, or security questionnaire to a vendor? Okay, how many have been on the receiving side of one of those? Okay, so since it sounds like many of you are familiar with this problem or set of problems that's associated, let's see if we can get thanks. I need
it's on the other side.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk through sort of how we might do this, or how we actually do have this sort of answering security questionnaires, RFIs, RFPs inside of Vectara.
You might need to change your settings.
No, I got it.
And do you need a clicker?
No, I'm good, thanks. All right, so how we actually fill these out inside of Vectara and what this sort of looks like. And we're going to use Vectara as sort of an example of how you might go about building an application based on GenAI, RAG specifically, using the RAG paradigm, and some of the pitfalls that we have seen companies sort of fail at, and why we've built some of the solutions to these as well inside of Vectara. So you might not be able to see all these questions. Let me bounce the screen or the font size up a little bit. This just comes from our FAQ on our website. I've pulled a number of questions and the answers that we've sort of put on our website for what Vectara is, where our headquarters are, these sort of questions that come up very frequently in RFIs. But you could imagine I could have acquired these RFI questions alongside associated answers from historic RFIs and RFPs, right? And we've put them into this spreadsheet. Inside of Vectara, I've gone ahead and also indexed those questions alongside answers inside of Vectara. And so this is just sort of the Vectara view of all of the data that sits behind. You can sort of see like a spreadsheet ID followed by a cell ID, for example. And that's an indication of where the sort of information came from. And now, find my mouse. Let's suppose we get a new RFI or RFP that has come through, right? And for those that have filled one of these out, you know that the questions that come through can be asked exactly the same question, but asked in 10 different ways. So you might get a question like, where's your headquarters? Can you please provide the address? Can you tell me the city and state of your headquarters? Are you based in the United States or not? All these sort of questions that come up. And you need to be able to answer those questions in the way that they've been asked. And I'll show how we do this internally, and then I'll show sort of how this works. We'll sort of peel the onion layers back and sort of walk through what that looks like. So I can do something like Vectara answer, and we'll just get the answer to this question based on the questions that already exist inside of the knowledge base. And what's happening behind the scenes is Vectara is going off and sort of performing this internal query, right? It's doing a question against the database or the corpus that I just showed, and it's feeding that information into the GenAI system on the tail end to produce the answer that's provided here. Now I've just saved myself time, right? I don't have to go off and answer these questions the 10 different ways that they've come through. And let's just suppose the next question comes through and asks, instead of give me your address, I need the city and state, right? And now Vectara has gone off and answered that question with the city and state information. We get questions all the time like, do you train on customer data? The answer to that is that we generally do not train on any customer data. We don't train on general purpose models on customer data, but we do provide the ability to do fine tuning if and where necessary. We often find that's not necessary. So let's suppose we've had those two questions come through from different RFIs or RFPs or security questionnaires. And again, the Vectara is going to go off and answer these questions. Right, so we get the first answer back that Vectara does not train its general models on customer data, but we can assist with fine tuning. And again, we get the additional sort of context back that we often recommend against fine tuning. Right. Now let's suppose we get a question that we just don't know anything about, right? We don't know. Vectara has no information in its FAQ about the color of a zebra. Okay, so if we get a question like this that we just don't know the answer to, this is one of the common sort of areas of hallucination is companies finding that maybe it's just going to try to make something up. And we've done a lot of work on the back end to make sure that the prompts go through and tell the Vectara, the system, to not make something up if it doesn't know the answer to it. And likewise, we have... do we have embedding support in Arabic, right? And now Vectara does support Arabic, but we don't have any information on the FAQ that specifically says that we support Arabic. And in this case, we're using, you can see that actually the LLM has made something up, right? It's hallucinated an answer saying that Vectara does support Arabic because we said we supported 100 languages, and it just interpreted that to mean, the LLM interpreted that to mean that we support Arabic as well. And in this case, what's happening is we're actually running the answer through our factual consistency model that you're going to hear about more later, and it's determined that the summary that has been provided by the LLM is inconsistent with the facts that have been produced as part of the query. And we're automatically highlighting that as a concern for the operator that's using the system to be looking into. Now we're going to peel the layers of the onion back and sort of show how this works behind the scenes. Now I know not everybody here probably speaks code, but behind the scenes, basically this all boils down to about 100 lines of code to interact with Vectara. And I'll sort of walk through some of the, again, pitfalls that we've seen companies deal with. Is this not? Oh, thanks. Some of the pitfalls that we've seen companies deal with when they're interacting with or trying to build GenAI systems and RAG systems, and how we sort of have tackled this inside of Vectara. So the first is that you're going to see we have the question come through. So we're just feeding along the question. The next thing that you're going to see is this lexical interpretation here. And this is something that we have realized over time that many companies fail. They think they can just throw a vector database in, load it with an embeddings model, and you're going to be off on the races. Now, what we've realized and what many companies start thinking about is fine tuning to try to get like these additional bits of data that might have never shown up in the training data, to add them into the embeddings model. But what we've realized is actually having hybrid search, where you're making use of both a keyword system and a vector system alongside one another, allows you to perform the same benefits, or many of the same benefits, and in fact, many often much better, by allowing the keyword system to handle the unusual terms, the things like a product code or other code that might have never existed inside the training set, and perform that side of the query, and then interpolate that with the vector database that's very good at sort of general knowledge. And so that's what this lexical interpolation does, is it tells it to sort of blend those two results together. We're going to get 100 results back, and that's going to be for our fast boomerang model, which is like a very fast embedding model. we're going to, for each result, we're going to get the 3 sentences before the result and 3 sentences after the result. That way we're able to understand what the sort of context of the answer was on sort of the beginning and the end. Oftentimes there's sort of information leading into or after the answer. We're going to filter down. Again, we've added a filter in this case for only finding the answers, but having the ability to do metadata filters is incredibly important for security reasons. You can imagine instead of filtering by answer here, or in addition to filtering by answer, if there's security information like clearance codes or like role-based access control or attribute-based access control, you can dump those into the filters as well. And having the ability to do those sort of structured filters is incredibly important. We're going to do what we call a chain re-ranker. So we don't just have one re-ranker in the system. We have the ability to do multiple levels of re-ranking. And the first thing that we're going to do is make use of this cross-attentional neural re-ranker. It's slower than the embedding model, but it is significantly more powerful and more accurate in terms of the tail end. So we're going to re-rank those top 100 results to get back the best answers towards the top so that we can feed the best answers into the LLM. And then we're going to apply some rules, right? So we're going to apply some business rules. Like if you had asked me to fill out this security questionnaire a year ago or 2 years ago, our headquarters has actually shifted. It moved at one point, right? So the answer of where your headquarters was, if I had filled out the RFI or RFP a year ago and used the answer from a year ago, it would be inaccurate relative to the answer today. And so there's times when you want to make sure that you're updating for recency bias, for example, or if you're operating a retail, you might want to do something like influence the results by margin, for example, to put the results that are better for your business towards the top. And on the tail end, we'll feed along to the generative system. I want my response language in English in this case. We're going to feed a prompt along. The prompt basically tells answer in the form of an RFP or RFI answer. We're going to use the out-of-the-box Vectara parameters for this, and we'll feed along 7 results. Basically, the top 7 results, we're going to cut and paste those into the LLM to have it produce an answer. And that's really sort of how it all works behind the scenes. And what we started to do is just to take out some of these questions. Oops. So let's say we get a new one that comes through. Is Vectara SOC 2 compliant? Okay. I happen to know that this question and answer does not exist on the Vectara FAQ. So hopefully we're going to see something like, yeah, exactly. The return results don't contain the information. And so we're going to solve that problem right now. I'm going to go to a different section of our website, which does have this information. And we'll copy paste this into our response. Now this is going to be the correct response. And we're just going to go through and say, okay, let's just go ahead and save those unsaved answers back into Vectara. And now we've got the answer actually saved back into Vectara. And I can start asking following questions like, now that I have this information, is Vectara SOC 2 compliant? And I'll get the answer back to that. And I also can start asking questions like, is Vectara HIPAA compliant? All right. And do exactly the same thing. And you can see like these different questions might have come through. They've been formatted in different ways. I've just now saved the information back into Vectara, and now it's able to answer the follow-on questions or the alternative questions that might have come through as well in the context and the way that you would expect those questions to be answered by the GenAI system. It's sort of like allowing you to handle these diversity of the questions that might exist inside of inside of your system. So we often get these. I often am responsible for answering a lot of these questions. I sit on like our security side and also help out with RFIs and RFPs. So I can tell you that when you're able to do these sort of things, answer the questions in the context that you're being asked of them, it just is a massive time saver, right? I'm not finding the answers to these. I'm not typing up these paragraph long answers for every single question that's coming through. And just like I said, a massive time saver. With that, if we can go back to the slides. I realize I'm the only thing keeping you between lunch, so we'll just walk through the last thing. So just as a recap, the things that we have found to be most beneficial is the set of things that we found to be most beneficial when we've built out these type of RAG systems ourselves, and we've talked to a number of customers and prospects, is that often your users won't use GenAI if it's too difficult to use. A lot of times, I talk about the ChatGPT style big gray black box of death. Right, not every GenAI application needs to be that. Right, you can see like by bringing the GenAI application into a familiar place for me, we get these RFIs and RFPs come through as spreadsheets, and so having the sort of place and the ability to answer those questions directly at the place that I'm operating in, the massive time saver, and actually allows users and encourages users to make use of the system. You have to sort of consider how the AIs can hallucinate, because there's many different ways that hallucinations can occur. They can be the form of not knowing something that it should know, right? So sort of providing active visual feedback to the users on that. It can be things that it's made up something, and it could be sort of a very tricky thing for you to understand what it's made up. In the case of like the Arabic, does your system support Arabic? The answer is yes. But again, the information did not support or did not provide that exact answer. So being able to flag that, again, through something like what we have our Factual Consistency Score, is absolutely critical. Feeding too much data. So LLMs have grown in the ability to feed very large context windows, very large amounts of data into it. And sometimes we see companies that go through and say, well, in that case, I'm going to throw in just boatloads of documents into the system. And when you do that, you actually encourage the system to hallucinate more in many cases, because it has a harder time finding the needle in the haystack of all of the information that you fed it, in addition to it being more expensive and increases your latency and everything else. So using a RAG-based system where you're really relying on the query side to do the heavy lifting for you on the generative side is really important. Yeah, a lot of data types do have age and security considerations. Again, if you had asked me where the company headquarters was a year or two ago, or whether we had SOC 2 Type 2 compliance a year or two ago, the answer to those questions would have been different than the answers today. And sort of keeping a lot of vector stores are strictly focused on text similarity, for example, and being able to combine those together with other relevancy metrics, things like the age of the data, again, security considerations, should this person even be able to see the data, is ultimately super important for a lot of use cases. Again, you can help the LM with a lot, having that very good relevance. So in this prompt, I had sort of said, consider results that are towards the top of the search result list as more important than results that are towards the bottom of the search result list. So encouraging it to sort of rely on that search result relevance can help, again, allow you to decrease your price by not feeding a boatload of bad data in. It can decrease the latency. It can also help with things like formatting and accuracy, for example. And then, yeah, things like having the sort of live visual indication of whether a hallucination has occurred, like you saw, highlighting possible hallucination has occurred here back to your users, highlighting in a different color, potentially providing other sort of visual cues back to the users, really helps them build trust that they're not going to be inserting something back into their line of business or into sort of an external user that might have some falsehoods behind it. So encouraging you to do sort of all of those things. So that's it. Happy to take questions from the audience. Or, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, since we're doing demos, there is another quick demo I wanted to show you. very similar to this one, but this one is to highlight that we also support voice in our platform as well. So it's not just textual like you see right here. Our salespeople, some of them, all of them actually, they want to take me with them in every meeting they go on to have the CEO with them to answer the harder questions that the customers might be asking. So I was able to use our platform to create a voice clone of myself. And this voice clone not only has the knowledge I have, which I uploaded all the knowledge I have, and including some of the questions that Shane just showed us right now, it also has my voice, so it sounds like me, and it talks in the same way I would talk. So I'm going to show you that very briefly. This is only going to take 30 seconds.
Hey, how I can help you solve business problems with Vectara's AI assistants and agents?
And what does Vectara do?
Vectara is an end-to-end platform that helps product builders add powerful generative AI features to their applications.
And how do you solve the hallucinations problem?
Vectara tackles the hallucination problem by never training on your data. Instead, it grounds its responses in your knowledge base, which greatly reduces hallucinations. Plus, it provides a factual consistency score with every response, ensuring better accuracy. This method keeps the risk of inaccuracies minimal, while enhancing trust in the system.
And do you have any pets?
Yes, I have a Maltese dog named Tuta, a Pomsky named Luna, a Munchkin cat called Tuti, and 2 parakeets named Malakia and Yuki. They bring a lot of joy.
Thank you very much. You can go away now. Bye-bye. You can be very rude to them. They don't get upset. So that's perfectly fine. Don't worry. The AI's feelings are not hurt there. The key point, again, yes, this sounds like a demo. It's easy, and you might have seen this from others. But the key point is to do this without hallucinations, correct answers, with the proper security. It would not reveal the revenue, which my clone might know, and it can explain how it came with the conclusions. Oh, he didn't go away. He's still there. No, don't tell us the revenue. Anyway, so with that said, Ofer, you want to come back up? Should we take questions or?
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you, Shane, for showing that use case. If there's any quick 1 or 2 questions, yes. So I have good news for you. We have a demo of that later in a couple hours in one of the other talks, where you can combine textual and structured information together. So please wait for that, but the short answer is yes. Maybe one more question?
Yeah.
Anyone? Yeah.
When you have people be able to save the answers like you just said, how do you keep your work from being polluted by anybody just saving whatever?
Great question. So we're still a fairly small company right now, so we don't have this problem as much right now. I can always go back through and cull answers, and we record things like the time and who has uploaded something, right? So that's really those are some of the strongest ways, is just like keeping the audit trail, basically. Now, of course, people can go through and upload potentially bad results. We have the ability to sub-segment through what we call corpora. So you can have maybe your like specific departments that are answering questions specific ways. And obviously, like a lot of times the department might be aligned to one set of answers. And when we perform these queries, the RAG queries, they actually can focus on one or more corpus. And so you could have something like maybe your answer is different than my answer, even within the same organization, parent organization, but we have sort of sub-departments, for example. And so segmenting that information off into the different areas, allowing me to ask questions only of mine, and then allowing you to do the audit trail is ultimately the most important. I mean, of course, we can do things like we have a permissions model that allows us to be read-write versus read-only, so we can do those sort of things as well. At Vectara, we haven't found that necessary yet, but I know a lot of companies here, our organizations are bigger. So.